Good morning, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here, and congratulations to the International Economic Forum of the Americas and also to FIU. And I have to say very proudly, I really am very proud to serve on the advisory board of the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom at FIU, and also to have been a senior leadership fellow there in the fall of 2022. This morning, we heard a great deal about the need to navigate the new geopolitical reality from Senator Hagerty, and we also heard from a very distinguished panel about mastering the new economy. In my very short, lightning remarks, I hope to try to connect some of the dots here about the current challenges confronting not just only our hemisphere, also the global community, but also what are the opportunities? Because we're looking at not only the geopolitical reality, but we're also looking at the economy. So what are the challenges? I'd say first, we're living in an era of great power competition. What does this mean exactly? The United States' power influence internationally is being challenged by China and Russia. And also at the same time, they seek to not only diminish our power and influence globally, and no less in our own hemisphere, but also at the same time, they seek to fragment our partnerships, our alliances. And we see this manifested in so many different ways. We see that when Russia invaded in an unprovoked way in Ukraine and has literally transgressed into Ukraine's sovereign territory, we see the impact of that aggression, its impact on the security of the transatlantic community, our own security interests, but also, by the way, that of Japan. Prime Minister Kishida spoke very specifically to this issue, that what happens with that invasion in Ukraine affects the Indo-Pacific. He's quite right, because you look at China and Xi Jinping's statements, in fact, about Taiwan and its desire to have aggressive behavior and bring Taiwan into its fold and not respect its own sovereignty. And then also the Middle East. Russia has very strong relations with Iran. Iran has backed Hamas. Hamas invaded and this very tragic situation in terms of Israel and what we are witnessing afoot. So these are just a few examples of great power competition and the way it manifests itself. But I'm going to connect it to the hemisphere. In terms of advancement of technology, there's really the good, but also there's the challenge. And what's one of the number one challenges? Cyber and cyber attacks. Countries like Brazil, Mexico, Colombia have all had their infrastructures attacked, no less the United States. But here, did you know that Latin America, according to experts, it has reported and experiences some 1,600 attacks per second, cyber attacks per second? It's shocking. 2 years ago, Latin America was actually singled out as having set a record for the number of cyber attacks. And then you have Russia using disinformation, social media. We witnessed this in Chile in terms of the protests that occurred a number of years ago, and also in Colombia, where the officials are actually talking to this particular issue. There's another challenge, not just only great power competition, the use of advanced technology, but let me also mention the last panel spoke to the issue and the impact of the pandemic and also the spread of COVID. That did set back the global community and certainly our hemisphere here. It had a challenge and an impact of which all of our countries are trying to correct. And then globally, there's drug trafficking, there's corruption, organized crime. In our own hemisphere, that's a challenge, but it's also much broader. Let me go to, these are some of the few challenges that stem from great power competition and are connected to it, but let me go to some opportunities, because in my lightning round, I don't want to only mention what we're up against, but what are we also have before us? Here, I'd say one of the biggest opportunities, and because of the impact on global supply chains, is manufacturing, nearshoring manufacturing and production. and its impact on the growth of economies. I just was in Mexico City, and I was very heartened to hear something there. Mexico, as you may know, has overtaken China as the top supplier of merchandise to the United States. It is now our number one trading partner. Canada has also, by the way, advanced and overtaken China. This is very good news. But by the way, that doesn't mean that Mexico has curtailed its own trade relationship with China. No, it has. But it has structured it in a way that also is beneficial for itself. So I mentioned shifting supply chains. So here, due to the pandemic, and also, by the way, specifically, let's take the war in Ukraine, you had grain coming out of Ukraine, which was blocked, the severe blockade. Countries like Egypt, different part of the world, 75% they rely on getting that grain and have not been able to get it. Even despite many diplomatic efforts and sort of the ebbs and flows of some things flowing out and then not. So here, let's look at our hemisphere. Brazil. Brazil certainly excels in terms of food production. There are opportunities here provided by a challenge that's before us. The Senator Hagerty, mentioned the importance of energy. I couldn't agree more with him about the importance of the United States unleashing its energy resources. Here, we've witnessed the weaponization by Russia of energy and energy sources, and we've seen many massive shifts and changes in Europe itself. Nord Stream 2, thankfully, came to a halt. And countries, by the way, like Germany, are looking at liquefied natural gas, actually, and have set up the first terminal and facility of its kind. They're getting some of this from the Middle East. But there are opportunities. When I look at Latin America, and again, our own hemisphere, the United States has something certainly to bring to the table in this one. Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Colombia. And then I do want to highlight one topic that came forward that I think is really it's a ground of competition, because China is very, very keen on critical minerals. And there's a struggle there with regard to critical minerals. And here, Latin America and South America has really a power base, because there are critical minerals and energy resources. And economic growth here can certainly be connected to those critical minerals. South America alone has 40% of copper reserves. 35 to 40% of lithium, by the way, is also from South America. You may know that Chile is the world's second largest producer of lithium, and also it's large in terms of green hydrogen for export. So here, critical minerals. The environment is also an important area. That will be a big topic of discussion tomorrow. Former President of Colombia, Duque, is leading a really very aggressive charge in this regard, and I think is very important because there are resources also embedded in and throughout the tropical forests and the environment. So finally, let me say that the region is also very connected to the global community, more so than ever. And this is a real opportunity and an asset. But you know what? It's also a challenge. And we heard a little bit about it in these discussions earlier this morning. What do I mean here? The fact is that competition is genuinely afoot. You have China and Russia are in and throughout our own hemisphere. And here you also have, in terms of trade and partnership, you have a very strong relationship between many South American countries and China in particular. 21 of the countries in the region actually are part of the One Belt, One Road. So the question is, which was posed, in fact, to the senator, well, what do you do about this? And this is what I do want to underscore again this morning, because it's crucial. Here, these countries have to make a choice. But if we are not there, if we are not politically and economically engaged as a partnership, then who's going to fill the space? And that's what the key is here. We have to be engaged. We have to be front and center. And here, I think most importantly, you know, we use the term that this is our backyard. I'd like to think of, by the way, Latin America as a whole, the Caribbean, Central America, South America, it's not our backyard, it's our front yard. And towards that end, we should be collaborating economically. We should be also working together in terms of how we also look at these new supply chains and we grow our economies in strong ways. In order to do that, we have to make this hemisphere a priority and not just one time. It has to be a bipartisan goal and objective from one administration to the other. So I will say that the great challenge is great power competition, but the great opportunity is right before us, which is exactly this. Make Latin America, make our hemisphere the front yard, and let's, starting today with this, in fact, World Strategic Forum and Mastering the New Economy, our agenda going forward. Thank you for inviting me for this lightning round.